Bienvenidos, señoras y señores. The carne asada is in vivo. That's right. This is a live broadcast of the Bleed Lows podcast. It is the trade deadline is about 8 minutes away. We're going to say, I'm sure there's going to be trades that are going to trickle in after the 3 o'clock deadline. So we're here because we're going to break the news to you guys. So chime in. Let us know what you guys think about what's going on with the lack of trades or the trades the Dodgers have already made. Before we start the show, let me just let you know that this episode of the Bleed Lows podcast has been brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting, and your favorite casino and card games are available to play right from your phone. So head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use the promo code BLEAV, BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus to your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. Okay, so let's we had some breaking news right now, Cody. Who did the Baltimore Orioles just get?
Jack Flaherty.
So Jack Flaherty is now off the board, fans. Jack Flaherty is no longer an option for the Dodgers. Cody, do we know what the Orioles gave up yet?
I'm refreshing my Twitter, but Passan just has the deal.
Let me just let everybody know. Roger is live at Dodger Stadium right now. So anything that breaks at Dodger Stadium, Babyface will go ahead and let us know. But so far, Jack Flaherty is officially off the board. We are 6 minutes away from the deadline. As you all know, the breaking news as of late is Rodriguez from the Tigers of Detroit vetoed a trade to the Dodgers. I want to get your thoughts on this real quick, Cody, because Babyface and I were talking. I think the Dodgers dodged a bullet with Rodriguez. And you're the stats guy, and I know you're going to explain to me why I'm right. Tell me why I'm right, Cody, that the Dodgers dodged a bullet here with Rodriguez.
You know, I think Erod was one of those types of pitchers that was hit or miss. A lot of these guys that are getting traded are pretty hit or miss, in my opinion. Like Flaherty, that would have been nice. That's good. I mean, we've seen when he's going good, he's one of the best pitchers in baseball, but 2019 was a long time ago. And Erod, he's been having a little bit of injuries this year, which is something that the Dodgers rotation doesn't need to be trading for. And I mean, the stats this year back it up. I mean, he's on a contract that's favorable towards the Dodgers where I think they could decline his option or he can opt out, one or the other. So that's probably why the Dodgers were interested. But I'm kind of glad that they didn't get him. It would have been nice, I guess, for insurance, but I'm okay that he rejected the trade. But yeah, I agree with you on that one.
The reason why I was glad that he vetoed the trade is, have you guys seen his numbers outside of the AL Central? Like, his numbers are not pretty. And it was funny. And my compadre reached out to me when the news broke that he had vetoed the trade. And he's like, do you have any idea why he wouldn't want to go to the Dodgers? And I automatically assumed he doesn't want to pitch on the West Coast. So it's like, why would you have somebody who doesn't want to be there pitching on the team? And plus, his numbers outside of the AL Central are horrible. And what does that tell us? The AL Central is not known for an offensive juggernaut. The Royals of Kansas City, the Guardians, the Tigers of Detroit, it's not like any of those teams have great offenses. So the fact that he's had a lot of success against those teams, but when he goes outside of the division, he's a different pitcher. That's not who the Dodgers need right now. And I get it. The Dodgers are just trying to get to the deadline. I mean, to the end of the season. We're going to get into this later, but right now we're just all focusing on mind-numbing trade talk, hot stove. I'm telling you, even though we are now 3 minutes away from the deadline, I think we're still going to hear deals happening after 3 o'clock. But for me, those are the reasons why I'm happy that the Dodgers are not, they didn't get Erod. I mean, I was afraid what he was going to do for this team. Any Babyface, do we have any breaking news? Any new trade updates?
Nothing new. There was mentioned that they could still work something out with Erod, but we were talking about it. I mean, we don't want that to happen. Latest is that they're talking to the Red Sox about James Paxton, and the White Sox are still open to trading Cease, so that has to go down the next couple minutes.
So, real quick, I want to give everybody the heads up, because if the Dodgers end up getting Paxton, Babyface is going to be incorrigible, because he was saying from the beginning that the Dodgers were going to end up with Paxton. So I'm just preparing you guys that if right now it breaks that the Dodgers have gotten Paxton, you're not going to hear the end of it from Babyface.
And Lance Lynn. Remember, I said they were going to get either like a Lance Lynn guy or probably like a James Paxton guy, and here we are.
Okay, so while we're handing out points, I want to hand out Cody's points, because Cody, when he's been on the show, has been saying from the beginning there's not going to be big trades. If anything, it's going to be more guys going out than coming in. Cody, do you want to take your victory lap right now? Because unless something happens in the last 2 minutes, it looks like you were right.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of just looking at the way the deadline was shaping up. It looked like it was a seller's market. You know, a lot of these guys are getting overvalued just because not many teams are selling right now. And the Dodgers, I still think in their mind, are banking on these guys coming back from the 60-day IL and performing. They did it last year, and it bit them during the playoffs, but they're kind of just hoping. You throw the same stuff on the wall, you hope it sticks at least once. And with Buehler looking like he's progressing pretty well, I assume that they're going to maybe make him an opener, because there's no way he's going to be ready to pitch multiple innings in the playoffs. You would be happy that he gives you 3 strong innings if that's the case. And then we talked about it before. There was no shot, and it was known around the league that Syndergaard basically threw his last pitch before he went on the IL. So the Dodgers offloading his contract and just getting him off the roster, I mean, that's a win. A lot of Dodger fans are happy for that. We got a huge upside guy with Rosario, which, I mean, he's done okay in his past 2-3 games that he's played. But yeah, you know, it's just, this isn't the year to go crazy and deplete the farm that a lot of fans want. And the Dodgers know that, so they're kind of just retooling the roster, kind of looking to the future, and I've kind of been on that board the entire year.
So breaking news from Bob Nightingale.
Yes.
So take that with a grain of salt.
Exactly, a grain of salt.
He said Dylan Cease will not be moved.
Well, man, Captain Obvious, man. I you know, that's Bob Nightingale. I think, Cody, you bring up a very interesting point, and I want to deal with it, but I just want to let everyone know it is now 3:00. We are at the deadline. So technically the trade deadline is over and done with. And what the Dodgers have to show for it right now is Lance Lynn, Joe Kelly, Kike Hernandez, and Ahmed Rosario. Now, we can still have trades coming in after 3:00. As long as they were reported to the league before 3:00 and approved. We just may not have news for it yet. But right now, it is not. Dodger fans who are on here watching us, please throw in your comments. I want to hear from you, because I know Dodger fan is not going to be happy. I know they are not going to be happy at all unless we hear another pitcher being named. But Cody brought up a very interesting point that I've been asking myself since we were getting closer to the trade deadline. Is this a team that you go in on? Because we saw the prices that these pitchers, I mean, the Rangers ended up giving up Acuña's brother, who is a very, you know, I guess people are very high on him, for Max Scherzer. I mean, you had to give up a lot. And I feel like this is the thing that kills me. When Giolito went to the Angels gave up their second and their third prospect. And someone had said, if those prospects were in the Dodgers farm system, it would be like the 6th prospect. So we've been saying this on this show all season long. The Dodgers are paying a very different price. And Do you give up these trade chips when there clearly wasn't supposed to be there clearly wasn't a game changer out there in the market? Hey, look, La Reina de Playa Larga is joining us. She is on her way to actually Dodger Stadium. And just to remind everyone, Babyface is at Dodger Stadium right now. And so La Reina de Playa Larga asked the question, who are you supposed to get in this market? Verlander was the only pitcher left and has only been consistent recently. Reina poses a very good question, because the other thing with Verlander is Verlander controlled that deal. Verlander had a no trade clause. So even if the Dodgers offered a better deal than what the Astros offered, if Verlander didn't want to go to Dodger Stadium, if he didn't want to pitch for the Dodgers, that deal wasn't happening. And this is the other thing that I need to stress to everybody, because again, it is now 3:03. We are past the trade deadline. If we don't hear a big name or anything that we think might help, Dodger fans are going to be pissed tonight. But just remember, guys, it takes two to tango. I don't think anybody is going to help the Dodgers. Nobody's going to go out of their way to help the Dodgers. Babyface, you are at Dodger Stadium right now. What is the vibe like at Dodger Stadium? Is there still hope right now? You're on mute, Babyface.
I mean, right now, I think everybody's kind of just hopeful that there's going to be a last-minute trade coming in or something. But, I'm starting to get the vibe, that people are starting to get upset that nothing happened, everything stayed the same. But, like you were saying, though, when I saw that Giolito trade, that they got their number 2 and number 3.
Yeah.
And, I know that in the Dodgers farm system, they'd be further down on that list. But what if the White Sox said, you know what, we want top 5 players for these guys? Then what to the Dodgers? Then what do you do? Do you really want to give your top 5, guys in your top 5 for someone like Giolito? Like, what if teams are doing that to the Dodgers? They're going, we want, we're asking teams for a top 5 prospect. We want the same from you. So I think the Dodgers are paying that higher price because their players are ranked higher.
But here's also the thing that we need to take into consideration is the evaluation. Maybe these other teams value these other teams' prospects more than the Dodgers. And I want to throw this out there to you, Cody. Was this, I get, is this the year to go all in with this team? But was this the year to trade Cartaya? I am concerned that maybe Cartaya's value is starting to go down, especially with the season that he's having in AA.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting that you bring that up, because the Angels were kind of in a similar situation where they traded their prospect that went to Giolito was their catcher. And that position, the Ohapi, he's injured right now, but they kind of see him as the future of the catching position. So they traded a position of strength, even though he was highly ranked. They got Giolito, someone that they didn't desperately need, but it could help them on their playoff run. For Cartaya, he's been touted as one of the best catching prospects that the Dodgers have ever had. But when you have Will Smith, that's the front of the catching position, I feel like they kind of missed their shot to trade him while his value was extremely high, because this year, and I believe is he in AA or AAA, he's been doing pretty awful at the plate. And it seems that a lot more teams are interested in other position players when it comes up in these trade talks. And Cartaya, if you asked 2 years ago, Cartaya's name was mentioned prominently. This year, the names you were hearing were Bobby Miller, Emmett Sheehan, Michael Busch, perhaps maybe Miguel Vargas, because since he got optioned down. So yeah, you could say that the Dodgers missed their opportunity in trading him while his value was super high, or it just means that they were never going to trade him to begin with. So it's just kind of how they evaluate it.
Yeah, he's in AA. He's in Tulsa. And so here's the thing that I think is becoming very clear. It seems that the Dodgers' top prospects and the farm system are all pitchers. And they probably are very nervous about trading pitchers, especially, with how this rotation is this year. Where would we be without Bobby Miller and Emmett Sheehan? These are guys. Bobby Miller, I think, was projected to be up probably around this time, but nobody was expecting Emmett Sheehan to be up there. And then you hear these names down in the farm system, like Landon Knack and other names and names I've never heard of. So look, I know it's coming, because here's the thing, right, Babyface? This is not about what's going to help us win the division. This is about what's going to help us win the World Series. And the way this team is built right now, I don't think anybody is confident that if they get into the playoffs, that this is a team that's going to win. I mean, the hope is that Urias figures things out and turns things around and becomes dominant. If Urias does that, if Kershaw comes back healthy, Gonsolin is the riddle that will always be a riddle, in my opinion. Buehler, it's going to be very interesting how they end up using Buehler, if they do end up using him as an opener. But Babyface, the way this team is built right now, are you confident? Because I think they have enough to win the division. But when they go into that playoff, like if they end up playing the Rojos again in the playoffs, are you confident? Because to me, it is obvious that matchup against the Rojos is not a favorable one for the Dodgers. The Rojos won 4 out of 6 against the Dodgers this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's what's tough right now is that rotation, right? I mean, I think that rotation is still even okay. They added Lance Lynn, and then maybe Pepio's coming back, right? And then Kershaw, and then maybe they get a couple innings from Buehler. I mean, it's still very much taped together, and that has always been a strength of the Dodgers, that rotation. And right now, if you go into the playoffs, the way it looks like, that rotation isn't strong. So I mean, I don't know if they're going to expect to try and outscore teams or not. But like you said, if they match up with the Reds, I mean, the Reds have come out of nowhere, and they're a really strong team. And we saw that just this past weekend. It's like they're going to be a tough team, not just for the Dodgers. I think for a lot of teams, they're coming on really strong right now. So remains to be seen. I mean, I don't know how it's going to look like, come playoff time.
And I haven't even mentioned the best team in the National League, the Bravos. So this is me just saying they can't match up against the Rojos. If they end up getting to the Bravos, I mean, that's going to be tough. So it's going to be interesting to me how they finish off the rest of the season. Hearing what Cody has said, hey, maybe they're planning on these guys coming back. I got flashbacks to last year. This is the definition of insanity, is it not? We are doing the same thing every year. And it's like, look, this is what works for us. We are sticking to it. But the formula, I think, has repeatedly proven it works in the regular season. It doesn't work in the postseason. Do we have a trade? All right, Babyface, come in. Breaking news.
The New York Mets are acquiring alien Phil Bickford and Adam Kolarek.
Oh, okay. So I want to bring this up right now about Phil Bickford. And this is why you guys need to follow us on our social media accounts. We have found out that, the government last week showed us all that there is aliens. There is proof of aliens. So I had asked the Dodger players, if there are aliens amongst us and they're undercover as humans, who in the Dodgers clubhouse would be an alien? And across the board, I think almost unanimously, Phil Bickford won. And then the next day, Phil Bickford got DFA'd. So this is the kind of journalism that you get from the Bleed Those podcasts. We ask the tough questions. We ask the questions that nobody wants to ask. And we're the ones that outed Phil Bickford as an alien. And now he's going to be the New York Mets problem. Cody, I have to ask you right now, if we don't hear, it is 3:11. If we don't hear any more news about trades, how does Friedman, let me ask you this, put on your GM hat. How is Friedman going to come out here and defend the fact that they did not get a pitcher when there was clearly a need?
Before I get to that trade that just happened just proved my point even more. They traded away 2 more guys that they DFA'd to clear some roster space. But,
another point for Cody. There you go. Cody
go.
was saying this from the beginning, folks. All right. This is why you got to listen to this show, because we have knowledge like this.
Freeman, I mean, he doesn't really owe many fans an explanation just for his track record in the past. Like this year, I think the way the trade deadline was and how it shaped up, it kind of wasn't a market to sell. Like I'm not selling the farm for these types of players, but when you're desperate for pitching, I mean, he did pick up a guy who was leading innings automatically on the team. Lance Lynn clears everybody on the rotation with the most innings. Yeah, he has an ERA over 6, but the thing we've been beaten on the head here is that we just need some guys that are just going to pitch some innings. You get to October, you figure it out some way or another with how many arms you got. Another problem that they had is left-handed hitting left-handed pitching. And they got 2 guys that hit left-handed pitching pretty well. I know, and like everyone loves Kiki. He's coming back. Maybe a change of scenery does well, but he does have okay numbers against lefties. Rosario has pretty good numbers against lefties as well. It kind of gives you some more infield depth. So it's not, you can't be super happy about the deadline with nothing else happening, but you can't be angry if you're a realist like how we are and we see what the team's actually doing. I think it's a okay trade deadline. Obviously, you're not going to beat the trade deadlines that we've had in years past where we're getting superstar after superstar, but that's not how it works every year. You have to work towards that, and the Dodgers know what they're doing. So I'm confident that they didn't want to overpay for the deals because you looked at some of the names that are being thrown out there. Like, speaking of Verlander, was it possible? Yes. He did want to go to the Astros, which, I don't blame him. He's been there for a while. But a lot of Mets fans, and I bet you the Mets brass was also asking, the first thing that popped out of their mouth was Bobby Miller. I guarantee you when they answered that phone call, they just said, okay, never mind then. And they hung up. And I don't want to trade Bobby Miller. Yeah, he's got an ERA over 4. He struggled a little bit, but I mean, this is a guy who's one of the best pitching prospects in baseball. Sheehan, I would have been okay giving up, but I don't think Bobby Miller though. So I think Andrew Freeman and the Dodgers front office, they saw this and that they said, we're happy with the team we got right now. We're going to bet on some of these guys coming back. It may work, it may not work, but you can't knock them for just trying to do what they've done before that's worked in years past.
Cody, you bring up a very interesting point, and I'm glad that you're the level-headed person on this show in the sense when you say you can't be mad at Andrew Friedman, because I thought with what happened at the end of this last season with the playoffs, and now with what's going on here with the trade deadline, I thought Friedman's going to get some heat for this because we are in this position, whether he deserves it or not. I think people are going to view it. We are in this position because of the moves that he made. Now, one of the things, and I know I'm going to get heat for this because it's like you're using it as an excuse, Juan, is the injuries. If Dustin May doesn't get hurt, if Ryan Pepio doesn't get hurt, if they don't have the injuries, is this team in a much better place at this point in the year? And that is something that, unfortunately, you're supposed to factor in, and that's where your depth comes in, but they just didn't have the depth this year to overcome that. So I think he deserves a pass on that. But the Syndergaard thing was a huge mess. And let me throw it out to you guys. I know I'm not allowed to say this guy's name, but fuck it, I'm going to say it. This is the ghost of Trevor Bauer. They signed a dude and there was a lot of money they're still paying him. And because of that, isn't it now this is where we feel the ramifications of that deal because of where their payroll is at? Or am I wrong there, Cody?
No, I mean, I said it when it was announced that not only were the Dodgers going to have to pay him for this year, but for the back pay for the previous years, it put him in a hole, and it was a guy at the time that they signed to a multi-year deal, which is where he would still be pitching. I'm pretty sure if he didn't do anything in his past, he would still be pitching at a pretty well level. And the Dodgers expected that. They gave him a contract for that very reason. And, when they announced that he was going to get the salary the Dodgers were going to have to cover, they had to change course. And it kind of showed in the moves that they made in the offseason. It's showing in the moves that they made at this deadline, where they would rather bank on these guys that are on controllable contracts, a couple $100,000, than the millions of dollars that they would have to shell out when they bring these guys in for the mid-year trades. So, it is haunting them. this season. Just another thing you can be mad at Trevor Bauer for. So,
Babyface, am I off base there? Do you think that the ghost of Trevor Bauer is affecting him right now?
I mean, yeah, I mean, so I guess they didn't want to spend, like we kind of saw this, like, well, they're not going to spend this season because of everything and the Shohei thing. I mean, if there's any good news maybe coming out, like if you are hoping for Shohei, it looks like the Dodgers might have that inside track now on Shohei for next year, because Scherzer came out today saying that it looked like the Mets, their plan is for 25 and beyond.
Yeah.
So if there's no Mets involved for Shohei next year, Dodgers can pretty much outbid anybody. So, I mean, that's good news, right? If you're looking for Shohei to come into LA.
I think that's the only way you can spin it. I think you can spin it here in that, once again, we've said this on this show many times. It is the Shohei Ohtani show. Shohei needs to come and save the small market Dodgers. We don't, we need saving here. I want to acknowledge David Wants a Taco chiming in, because I think what David is saying is a legitimate criticism. And that is, David Wants a Taco says, I feel like the Dodgers' main business mode is paying injured pitchers. We build a team around injured pitching every year. It's so weird. I think David is right, because how many pitchers can you name that we sign that are either coming back from injury or are injured, but it'll be healthy in the middle of the year? I mean, Daniel Hudson was great. I would love to have Daniel Hudson in this bullpen. But what happened? Daniel Hudson came back. He pitched, 2 games, and then he went on the injured list. Jimmy Nelson is taking up a roster spot on the 40-man that I just don't understand. What's that?
Dodgers made a move.
Okay, here, breaking news, everybody. Go ahead, Babyface. Give me some good news.
Oh, God.
So the Dodgers have acquired Ryan Yarbrough, and I guess that's how you say it. Yarbrough.
Ryan Yarbrough, ladies and gentlemen.
So pitching
for the Royals or in the Rays in 2020.
Wait, so he's a reliever, isn't he?
He's a starter reliever. He's done both.
There you go, everybody. That is our big. Now we got to play the game of musical chairs. So now, who else is getting sent down? Who can we say is an alien and is getting DFA'd now to make room for Ryan Yarbrough?
Trying to think of an odd man out in the bullpen, because I think he was starting games for Kansas City, because when he was on Tampa, he was a relief pitcher. He was called up as a starter, but he was moved to the bullpen just because he didn't have the stamina to be a starter. And he throws pretty fast. I think he throws high 90s, 100 miles per hour. But I'm not too sure he would replace in the bullpen right now.
Look, as much as we're sitting here harping on Friedman and all that stuff, I do, once again, I want to give Cody credit because he's the logical one on this. I think they were in a tough spot in terms of this trade deadline. I never thought the Arenado thing was real. Even though we had Juan Toribio on the show telling us it was real, I just look, I mean, don't get me wrong. I would love to have Arenado on this team, but does that really help this? And in the end, do you want Arenado for a couple more years, who is starting to show signs of regression? Or do you want to go and get Ohtani, which is another gamble, a huge risk? Because I don't know how much longer Ohtani can do this. I don't know how much longer Ohtani can. I mean, you saw examples. He's been cramping up a lot lately, and maybe it's because of the weather, the extreme weather we've had all over the country. But the amount of energy that he exerts, pitching and hitting at the same time, I think is going to have a toll on his body. I mean, I get the daily reminders of what Cody Bellinger is doing in Chicago. And I always tell people, if he was on the Dodgers, he would not be doing this, right, Babyface? He would not be playing the way he's playing right now.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, he's a unicorn. So, I mean, he might be, I mean, if we saw yesterday with Noah, with Syndergaard, did you see he made his first start for the Guardians?
Let's go ahead and talk about that. Let's talk. I mean, because I know Dodger fan was pissed to see that.
I posted it just saying, hey, he had a pretty good start. And the reaction I got, a lot of people were either pissed about it. Some were like, oh, good for him. or trying to somehow tear it down somehow. It was just like, hey, he went five and 1/3 innings, 2 hits, no runs, but he didn't have no strikeouts. So people were like, oh, he didn't strike nobody out. And he got hit hard, some loud outs, and he left. I guess he got a comebacker off his leg and he had to leave the game. But I'm thinking like, who cares? The guy gave him 5 innings. I mean, got into the 6th, no runs. I mean, right now, if you're the Dodgers, you take that, right? You take a guy, your starter going into the 6th, no runs. And, who knows? I mean, it was, 1 start. Who knows if he's going to continue to do that? But, yeah, Dodger fans weren't too happy with that outcome yesterday.
Well, what I think was more interesting, and I want to throw this to you, Cody, is what Syndergaard said. Syndergaard basically said, there's too many cooks in the kitchen and they messed me up. They just needed to leave me alone. And I mean, I'm summarizing this. I mean, this isn't what he said word for word, but basically what he was saying is if they would just leave me alone and let me pitch the way I want to pitch, then I'm good. I'm wondering if the Guardians are taking that approach with him and be like, hey, go ahead. Now, this is 1 start. So welcome to Overreaction City, everybody. But I will tell you this, if you start seeing more of this from Syndergaard, Dodger fan is going to lose their mind. Cody, what did you think of what actually Syndergaard said?
I read briefly about it. He's probably just frustrated with himself this whole year, probably the past couple of years. And, at the beginning of the season, we even talked about it, and he was ecstatic to join the Dodgers for saying everything they touch turns to gold. They fixed countless pitchers throughout their history, but there's also been other guys that they couldn't fix. And there's always that gamble. And it's like how you mentioned the comment earlier, they take an island of misfit toys and they try to fix it and put a rotation out there. And a lot of times it works for a good year or 2, and then they pretty much pump all the good baseball out of them, and then they ship them away.
Yeah.
And that is a recipe that's worked for a lot of teams, specifically those low-budget teams like the Tampa Bay Rays, who don't hold on to all these players, and that's what Andrew Friedman was built on. And Syndergaard, I thought he had a lot of high upside. I never thought he was going to be like Thor in New York, pumping 100-mile-per-hour sinkers by you, because it's just the injury he had and the track record he's had since that injury didn't indicate that. It also can be frustrating as a player having a bunch of guys talk to you in 1 year, the other year. The Dodgers have a coaching staff that you probably can't even put on 1 sheet of paper for just pitching. And that can be frustrating when you're saying, all right, they're telling me these things, they're showing me these stats, they're looking into the analytics, and I'm doing that, but it's not showing on the field. So then at the end of the day, with the season he's having, I would probably be like, I'm going to throw all that out the window. I'm just going to do what I think is best. And if that's what the Guardians are in a situation similar to the Dodgers where their rotation's super young and they just need somebody to go out there. And they traded their most dependable arm to the Rays yesterday. And Syndergaard looks like that he's going to be that innings eater that the Dodgers needed, but it looks like the Dodgers were just over the Syndergaard experiment. So, but yeah.
And that's all Dodgers really needed from Syndergaard. Like when we talked about it maybe like 2 weeks ago when Syndergaard was rehabbing, and I really thought, they're probably going to bring him back up. They're going to give him another shot, see how it goes. And because at that time you didn't expect either they're going to DFA him or nobody expected they were going to trade him, right? But I thought he would have got another shot in LA and see what if anything got fixed or not. But yeah,
and I think just because of the comments, like the fact that they didn't give him another opportunity, maybe there was something going on behind the scenes. Like I'm not going to go say, yeah, he was overly about to fight coaches, but there could have been some things where he said, it's just not working. Like if we can make a deal, like to get me somewhere else, that's fine. The Dodgers, he probably read stuff on Twitter. You say players don't read this stuff on Twitter. I bet you he saw all the hate on Twitter. You think he wanted to come back to LA after all the stuff he saw Rogers say? I mean, I wouldn't. So that's what you got to expect. I mean, players are human. So if he's as frustrated, he doesn't owe the Dodgers anything. Like they signed into the contract. If he wants to move on, he wants to move on. So that's pretty much the end of the story with him. So you wish him well in in Cleveland, but the Dodgers were prepared to move on, and they took a similar player, and I wrote it in the article yesterday. Lynn isn't the best pitcher this year either, and they're asking him to be the exact same thing they hope Syndergaard would have done, which is just give them innings. So that's the only deal where I'm kind of like, all right, well, what was the Dodgers thinking here? They got rid of a guy with a 7 ERA and brought in someone with a 6 ERA. Like I don't know what they were thinking.
They're playing chess, Cody. That's what the Dodgers are doing. They're playing chess. I mean, look, for me, I think what's very interesting, and Toribio convinced me of this. Trade them all. Trade them all. I just Bobby Miller is the only guy I wouldn't trade, because Bobby Miller has been in the major leagues now, and he has proven that he can hold his own. And I only expect Bobby Miller to get better. I only expect him to figure things out. I mean, this dude has 4 pitches. So you want everybody else, take him. But Bobby Miller is a guy that I wouldn't have traded. But everyone else, what are they going to do? Like, I know it's all doom and gloom right now, guys, because they didn't get what was clearly a need, a big pitcher that maybe would give you confidence going into the postseason. I think that's what the fans wanted, is somebody that was going to go ahead and help you. I still think they have enough to win the division. Now, come to playoffs, I'm not confident. I am not confident at all. But it interests me what they're going to do in the offseason, because Muncy's going to be up. Are they going to bring Muncy up? If you're not going to trade guys like Michael Busch and you sent down Miguel Vargas, does this mean next year you're going to give these guys a shot? Because if you're not going to give them a shot, then what are we doing here? Is there maybe something in the offseason? Do they maybe trade? Yeah, they didn't trade any of these guys now because they didn't think there was anything out there that was equal value. But maybe in the offseason, they engage some other teams and they're going to get more value for these guys, especially after we find out whether they get Ohtani or not, whether Urias re-signs with them. I mean, the offseason to me now has just become very, very interesting what they're going to do. But it is clear with all these roster spots, I think they're getting to a point where it's like they need to decide, what are they going to do with these kids, right, Babyface? I mean, Michael Busch is killing it again down there, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of when I thought they would have made a move for like Michael Busch, because like I said, he's killing it in AAA. And, I don't think we see Vargas again this season. So are they going to hold these guys into the offseason? Like you said, are they going to be maybe in the offseason look for a trade for these guys? Because, like, I mean, I'm sure those guys, if you ask Michael Busch, like, hey, what do you want? Like, I'm sure he wants to come up. I mean, I'm sure he wants to play somewhere, right? If it's not going to be the Dodgers, he wants to be somewhere, because I think he's proven, and they owe it to him. This he doesn't belong there anymore. He belongs up in the show. And, if the Dodgers aren't going to give him that opportunity, he definitely deserves to be given that opportunity somewhere. So,
Toribio, he brought up a good point with Arenado. And, all that talk got me super excited, just because, yes, the some of the stats that show that he's in the decline, which he's a player in his 30s. But me and my friend Jake on the Diamond Club, we talked behind the scenes, and we said, the names that are being thrown out there in a potential trade was such a massive overhaul of the roster. Like, you had names like Max Muncy, Chris Taylor, prospects. Right. We were getting potentially 3 of their players because it was going to be a massive trade. Those types of trades happen in the offseason. That's very hard to get a trade deadline trade package that way. Because even when we got Trey Turner and Max Scherzer, we really only gave up 2 players that barely were on the roster.
Right.
In terms of, the Cardinals want to swap one of their bad contracts with one of our bad contracts, we give them a couple of prospects. That's stuff that happens in the winter meetings. So speaking of just thinking about what's going to happen next offseason, Michael Busch, they don't want to play him at third. Logically, he's been playing third in the minors before this year. I feel like that makes sense. Vargas is similar as well. And I don't think Muncy comes back. I mean, he's been a fan favorite. He hits the long ball, but I think another team would give him more money than the Dodgers would give him. So you kind of have to see, all right, maybe the Dodgers thought is, all right, let's hold on to our position players and we'll put them in the field. But when it comes to Busch, I don't know really what they're doing with Busch, because like we said, he's lighting up AAA. Like, he doesn't belong down there anymore. I really did think he was going to get traded for somebody, and maybe they just didn't. The stars didn't align. I mean, does he get called up in September call-ups? I don't think so. It'd probably be an activation for Buehler. He would be that one guy that gets called up. So, I mean, in the offseason, that's probably when you'll start to see more of these names start out there. It really just depends, because say they don't sign Ohtani, they're going to have to pivot to find another type of guy. They could revisit the Nolan Arenado thing. I think the Cardinals were entertained. I don't think they were happy that the talks got out there, because their GM was pretty upset about it. The fact that Nolan Arenado had to talk to the press about it. And it's just a matter of fact what's going to happen this winter. But, it really just the names that you saw out there, that trade wasn't going to get done. But I really want to see what they're going to do with Bush.
So it is now 3:33 out here on the West Coast. And no more news, right, Babyface?
Nothing new. I did see a positive on Ryan Yarbrough. If you're into that, he has a 2.08 ERA over his last 5 starts. So there's a positive, right, on your new.
So let me ask you this, Babyface: are you now going to go with Urias, Gonsolin, Bobby Miller, Lance Lynn, and Yarbrough? That's going to be your rotation. So Emmett Sheehan obviously is being sent down. Michael Grove is probably going to be sent down, right? That's your rotation, Babyface.
I mean, it looks like, unless I'm assuming he's going to be a starter, right? He's been starting with the Royals, so it looks like that's what they're going to ride with. Probably pepper in guys like Pepio, and when Buehler comes in, kind of put him in there and kind of see what happens.
So let me ask you this. Is this maybe another reason why they did not pull off a deal for a starter? Because now all of a sudden the rotation is going to get crowded. Because once Kershaw comes back, you now have Kershaw, you have Urias, you have Gonsolin, Lance Lynn, Yarbrough, and then you have Bobby Miller. So you're going to have a 6-person rotation, which the Dodgers have done before. What I'm getting myself to is I don't think we've seen Bobby Miller ever pitch this amount of innings before. Is Bobby Miller going to have a phantom IL stint, or is Bobby Miller going to be sent down? I want to prepare Dodger fans for this, because when they lose their mind that Bobby Miller is getting sent down, Cody, you're laughing at me, but I'm trying to think the way Andrew Friedman thinks. Is that what's going to happen?
I mean, I'm like 50-50. I'm torn, because I feel like -2 starts against the Giants and the Astros, which kind of just inflated his ERA. He's been very serviceable, 2-3 earned runs. And then when he first got called up, he was lights out. I think they'll be conservative. And what I mean by that is I think the trades that they made, the way I'm just picturing in my head, if I'm Andrew Friedman, I'm playing GM right now. You got a bunch of starters who can't go deep in games. Yeah. You got a really deep bullpen. You've got maybe 2 dependable starters that can probably pitch past the 5th or 6th inning, and that's probably Kershaw and Lance Lynn. You got 2 pitchers that struggle in the 1st inning, and that's Lynn and Urias. You got Gonsolin, who can't go more than maybe 3 or 4 without starting to get lit up. I feel like come playoff time, or even maybe September, they're not going to be doing bullpen games, but they're going to be saying, all right, Urias is starting. Let's throw an opener out there. He gets in the 2nd, gets us to the 6th, and then do the same thing with Gonsolin. Maybe Gonsolin piggybacks off of Sheehan, or Sheehan piggybacks off Gonsolin. I think you're going to see a lot of matchup-based rotation. Like, the only guys that are going to be getting their traditional starts are probably going to be Kershaw. I mean, Urias will still get his innings if he's pitching well. And then probably Lynn. That's probably the only 2 that I imagine are going to be going 5 or 6 every time.
See, that's what concerns me, because that recipe that you just talked about, when the bullpen has to cover 4 innings, the more, especially in a series, the more the other team sees these bullpen guys, the less effective the bullpen is going to be. And that's I feel like this is what happens every year. Friedman is very confident in that bullpen, and yet we can't get any length out of the starters. And then all of a sudden, come the 3rd or the 4th game in the series, the bullpen starts getting hit hard. And that's because the other team has seen these guys. Babyface, that's the plan, right? That's what we're going to see is we're going to see hopefully our starters give us 5.
I mean, that's the plan. I mean, I was surprised too. They didn't even pick up any bullpen pieces. It looks like, coming today, like some other, besides Kelly, the other day, like they didn't.
Did you think they needed another bullpen piece?
I mean, they always need pitching, right? They need starters. They need relievers. I mean, just so some of these guys, like you said, that have been during the season have had issues. I mean, Bickford's out.
Right.
So you kind of got to get those guys, get some new pieces in there. But I mean, it looks like, there's nothing else coming down. And a lot of other teams, the Padres made some moves. The Marlins made some moves. Nothing like big, but I think some reinforcements that are definitely going to help those teams. And, we made those 4 moves prior. The Dodgers made those 4 moves prior last week. It remains to be seen, how much those guys are going to help them.
Do you see the show pods in your rearview mirror? The same show pods that you buried? Have you seen them yet?
They're still buried.
Okay. All right.
I agree. I agree with Roger.
They had.
Wish I had your confidence.
They had
there's
horrible loss
last
night.
Coming up this weekend.
Did you see the loss last night? How they lost? That bases loaded, nobody out, and they couldn't score. So I mean,
all I'm saying is a sweep can fix a lot of things and can change things.
Yeah, but
we haven't even gotten to the fact that JD Martinez is going to go on the IL. And I want my damn point, because what did I say a few weeks ago when they gave him rest? I said, don't mess around with this. These kind of hamstring things can linger. And sure enough, I mean, he was limping noticeably when they took him out of the game. He's going to the IL.
You said 2 weeks, right? So we're on about a week now, right?
Yeah, so. But they should have just let him
just call up Michael Busch, make him DH.
Right, Cody? I mean, now there's no excuse. Now there's no excuse, right?
Yeah. I mean, he's batting, I think, the past 2 weeks, I think he was batting over 400, had a couple home runs. He's won player of the week. I think he won player of the month down there this year too. And he's been lighting it up down there. So you might as well just give him a shot.
So is that the move we're going to see? Is Muncy's now going to be DHing and we're going to see Michael Busch at third?
I don't know if they're going to put him at third because it just doesn't seem like they're comfortable with him at third. I feel like they have so much more confidence in Muncy at third, which, I mean, he's not the worst defensive third baseman, but I feel like Busch is a little more athletic. He's younger. I bet you he can cover more ground. And that was a position he played earlier in his major league career in the minors. But I definitely think, I mean, the no-brainer decision is to call up the best hitter in AAA to say, all right, well, he really just needs consistent at-bats, and that's a way to get consistent at-bats, so – and then they'll probably shuffle the DH role between Smith, Austin Martin's going to start in a little more games. They didn't solve that issue.
You said the trigger word on this show, Cody. Austin Barnes.
But, I imagine with Martinez likely going on the IL, that's what they're kind of going to take the similar game plan with the DH they've had in the past couple years they've had it. So which is just a rotation of, all right, well, we like the guys bat in the lineup, but he needs a rest day from the field. So here we go. So,
well, actually the Padres did make one move that, and then they'll probably see him this weekend. They got Dick Mountain.
Dick Mountain. Yeah. Dick Mountain is coming, and Dick Mountain's probably going to slap everyone in that Padres clubhouse. And watch, I'm telling you, the show pods are going to make a run. They're going to make a run, and everybody's going to start. Look, I feel the butt cheeks are already clenching.
Juan, what gives you that confidence? They have not won 4 games in a row all season.
Dick Mountain. Yeah. That's what Dick Mountain is a game changer. You guys talk about what happens in a clubhouse, which I think is one of those things that, and Cody mentioned this, if they pulled off that Arenado deal, losing guys like Muncy, even if you had to lose both of them, Taylor and Muncy, those are huge guys in that clubhouse. Those are guys that have been on that team for a while. If you trade those guys, how do you think the rest of the team is going to react to that? I think Dick Mountain's going to go in there and tell those show pods guys, hey, get your head out of their ass. We're here to win games. And this is the time of year when the show pods turned things around last year. Have you seen the way Blake Snell has been pitching? And and we know he kills the Dodgers.
I mean, he's pitching really good, but they have the same problem Dodgers had prior to. Their bullpen's killing them. Their bullpen is what's killing them.
La Reina's the only one that agrees with me. She's chiming in. The Padres run on spite in the second half. I wish it wasn't true. Look, I hope you guys are right, and I will gladly give you guys your points once the show pods get eliminated.
I mean, right now, if you're looking at the division, you should be worried about the Giants, right? What are they, like 2 games back?
I'm worried about everybody. I'm worried about the Giants. I'm worried about the Dodgers are playing the Diamondbacks next week. They got 2 games against them.
I mean,
and then they end the season up in San Francisco. I hope it doesn't get to that point where they go up to San Francisco and the division is still up for grabs.
Even if the Padres made a run, they're not going to catch the Dodgers. I think that's out of reach. They have a shot at the wild card, but like you said, they're still catching some other teams. Like the Cubs have been hot. If the Cubs stay hot, there's a lot of teams in that wild card race. So that's why I see it difficult for it to happen. But I mean,
and the Padres have just been so inconsistent, like Roger said. When they're pitching well, they're not hitting well, and that's kind of the combination that they have right now. Is they're not scoring as many runs, and then they're also not pitching well, and they haven't been able to put up consistency in the win column and getting enough wins to create a win streak. And that's kind of what they need at this point in the season to catch not just the Dodgers, but those wildcard teams like we mentioned. But, they run on spite, but like this is a deadline where any sensible GM would have sold off assets that could have replenished their farm system. So, you're looking at the Padres like, yeah, they're going all in right now, but like this may be like their make or break year. And we may start seeing like it get rough in the next 2 or 3 years for them.
The thing is the schedule the Dodgers have in the next 2 weeks, they need to take advantage because the Diamondbacks have been free falling. The Giants were losing a little bit. If the Dodgers, the Dodgers they were lucky that they didn't go 0-6 on this last homestand. They could have very easily gotten swept by the Azulejos and the Rojos. If they would have won those series, their lead grows. I mean, they had a chance to put a lot more distance between the Gigantes and the Diamondbacks between them, right? So they got 3 against the Athletics of Oakland. They got a tough 4-game series down against the Show Pods. And then they got 2 games against the Diamondbacks. And then they got 4 against the Rockies. They got to beat up on the Athletics. And they got to beat up on the Rockies. They need to take advantage of that. And what I'm concerned about is with JD Martinez going down, we've talked about this many times. This lineup to me is top heavy. So losing JD Martinez, now the lineup gets a little like it's Will Smith, it's Mookie, it's Federico. Mookie has this nagging ankle thing. I don't know, because Mookie was starting, now his bat was starting to slow down. I don't know if you guys have noticed that. And Mookie's a streaky guy. So if all of a sudden the offense who was carrying this pitching staff goes to shit, we're going to find ourselves in a dogfight till the end of the season. So none of you have those concerns. Am I just the only one that's saying the house is on fire?
I have the concerns. It's just not with the Padres.
No, they could easily be on a 7-game losing streak, right? They lost that last game on the road, then they came home, and that whole first 6 games at home. Yeah, I didn't feel there was something missing. Like they just didn't look the same like they did on the road trip. Like they played really good on the road trip through Baltimore and New York and Texas, right? And I didn't feel that at home. And I don't know if that maybe it had something to do with the trade deadline, right? There was speculation, hey, Max Muncy might get traded. Hey, Chris Taylor might get traded. I don't know. That gets into the players' heads and kind of puts them on edge, everybody, the entire team. Because like you said, like, hey, we might be losing these guys that have been part of our club for many years now. And maybe just put it now, maybe with the trade deadline passing now, they kind of get back to where they're at. But, you're right. They got to sweep this series against the A's and then, go and get a split in San Diego possible. And then, like you said, just beat up on those teams that they need to beat up on and just continue to finish out the season.
Or these guys are playing hurt. There's Mookie's ankle. I don't know how healthy Chris Taylor is with that knee. A while back, they were saying, that the knee was still bothering him, but so many people were hurt, they needed Chris Taylor out there to play. Now you got JD Martinez's hamstring issue. It's the time of year. It's the dog days of August, right? It's the long season. Now you got these injuries. I guess to your point here, the trade deadline is always the point where we get some reinforcements to help us get to the end of the season. Look, I think they have enough to win the division. I really do. But this one's just a tough one for me in this trade deadline because, yeah, I would have liked to have gotten Giolito, but I don't know if I'm going to give up all that stuff for Giolito. And that's the real issue, is this, like, there wasn't anybody out there. Like, I don't feel comfortable giving up all those assets for Verlander. Did any of you guys feel comfortable like giving up all that stuff for Verlander or even Scherzer?
No, I thought maybe the idea of the Mets paying a majority of the salary, I don't think that even mattered to LA. Like,
No.
Salary was the one trade, like the team that could have traded for either of those guys that didn't matter. The Mets were just doing it because it makes the package back better. And that's what the Mets are building for. So that's the reason why. They probably walked in, they said, all right, we'll pay almost half or most of his salary just to get him off the books. And then you can have him. We just want Bobby Miller, Emmett Sheehan, Michael Busch. And I don't think the Dodgers were okay with that. I think they would rather have held on to those arms. And you saw that with a bunch of trades. Like they said, Dylan Cease, the price was astronomically high, a bunch of these pitchers. So they settled with kind of probably the worst starting pitcher that was on the trade block, and that was Lance Lynn. And, they solved some of the issue because he is an innings eater, but he's not the ace that everybody wanted. But you got to the point we've made before is that, yes, you want to trade these prospects to get big league talent, but you don't want to destroy the process that they've built and what they've built in the farm system unless it's for the right pieces. And I think this trade deadline was, there were some stars out there, but it wasn't like how it was before where we had, like, in 2017, get it going for Yu Darvish. I thought that was great. In 2018, it was 2018 similar to this year. They didn't really buy much, and that's kind of how they kind of scraped by and still went to the World Series. But if there's no big names and you don't think you can get those guys, like, you're not going to break the team for that.
Well, 18 was a Machado year, so.
That's the only one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Blue 22 has a good question here, and I've been asked this question. And so, who do you think was in the Erod trade that didn't go through? I have a feeling Michael Busch was in that trade. With the prices, the way starting pitching was going, I think Michael Busch was in that trade. And again, I'm on record. The Dodgers dodged a bullet on Erod because I don't think Erod would have pitched well for the Dodgers. The fact that he didn't want to be on the West Coast and the fact that he did not pitch well outside of the AL Central. But hey, there's a reason why Andrew Friedman and the rest of those guys have that job. And I'm sitting here talking into this microphone. They saw probably something there that they thought it could translate. But I have a feeling Michael Busch, I'd be very surprised if any of the Dodgers pitching prospects were in that deal for Erod, because it seemed like it was an overpay. And this is just the hard thing in this deadline is, yes, the Dodgers needed pitching. I wish they would have gotten pitching, but do you overpay? You got to, think about it, guys. You think as Friedman, think as a GM. Your responsibility is not only to win now, but you also got to think about the future. So if you have an opportunity to improve this team in the offseason or in the future, you have to consider it. So if you're going to use all your trade chips, I'm also, curious now, Blue 22, I'm throwing it out there. I wonder if Cartaya was in that deal for Erod, because I really think now this trade deadline was the time to trade Cartaya, because I just think his value is going to keep going down from this point unless he turns things around.
I think it would have been too much. So maybe a Grove or a Cartaya would, maybe, I think, in the Erod deal.
Right. So let me clarify. It was either Cartaya or Busch, not the two of them together.
Yeah. I mean, the only way I was comfortable trading some of these guys wasn't an Arenado deal. If they would have packaged him with
Yes.
like Montgomery or Flattery, like
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would have been okay with Sheehan and Bush and moving some of those guys except Bobby Miller. I think that's the only way. I think everything else is too high for moving some of their Dodgers top prospects. Nothing else out there would entice me to move those guys.
And I think that's like the only time that they really make those types of trades is when not only are they getting impact players now, but they're getting controllable impact players. Like
Yeah.
the trade that we keep bringing up is the Max Scherzer trade, Turner trade was really smart on the Dodgers end because not only did they get a pitcher that they desperately needed that year, they also got a controllable shortstop that they got for a year and a half. And they knew Seager was most likely going to walk because he maybe he didn't vibe with the West Coast and he wanted to go back closer to home but they knew if he did leave, they had the backup option, which was at the time arguably the second best shortstop or maybe the best shortstop in baseball. So, and similar to what Roger said, the only time I would have been okay if they gave up these really good prospects is if it was for Arenado. If they got Arenado and like a pitcher and another like one of their outfielders that was packaged along, then I would be enticing to give up the top guys. Like I would have thrown maybe Bobby Miller's name out there, Emmett Sheehan, all of them. But if that's not available, then they're not going to make those deals for a rental.
Well, I'd seen also some stuff. People wondering like, why don't you test like someone like Gonsolin out there, see what you might get for a Gonsolin,
Yeah.
and seeing if he's controllable and you can get some assets for that. They could have used for something else, but
I think some team would have overpaid for Gonsolin because some of these teams do need pitching, but I just feel like the Dodgers value Gonsolin still. The fans may hate him, but Gonsolin's been a pretty dependable pitcher. Even though he doesn't go deep into games, he has a really good track record for his stats. They could be misleading to some guys, but he's still got a really good career track record. So I'm gonna bet with him, but they could have definitely gotten something for him. But if they traded Gonsolin, I feel like a lot more fans would have been mad because then they're like, all right, we need pitching, but you traded away one of our actual healthy pitchers. So it could have gone either way with that one.
I think Crass 951, you have a very Dylan Cease. If Dylan Cease was available, I would have included Cartaya in a deal for Cease. I just think the White Sox were asking for a lot more than just Cartaya. I think it would have been Michael Bush there. I think the issue at him is all these teams knew the Dodgers were desperate. And because the Dodgers were desperate, these teams were very comfortable asking for the moon for these and making unrealistic demands in calling out the Dodgers on their bluff. Let's see if the Dodgers will do this. And luckily, there's a guy like Andrew Friedman who, likes to win deals and is not going to make a bad deal. So
I think pretty much every conversation started with Bobby Miller. I think every team, hey, you want Cease? Bobby Miller. Hey, you want Arenado? Bobby Miller. I think even the other guys, like everybody was asking for Bobby Miller, and Dodgers weren't going to do that.
Look, if I was a GM on another team, I would have done the same thing. You guys are desperate. You guys are coming to me. So let me see what I'll get away with. It's like, yeah, I want that Ferrari. Give me the Ferrari.
You mentioned it a couple episodes back. You said, the Dodgers are at a disadvantage because compared to years past, they've had struggles in previous years, but this is the year where they're like, we desperately need help. So they're actively going to multiple teams when before it was usually sellers that were saying, hey, we really like your prospects. Do you want this so-and-so guy? But now it's the other way around. So these teams were saying, you know what, Dodgers got a really good farm system. Let's get them for what they're worth. So that's basically what happened.
Pablo, I agree with you. I think you joined the live late because we had that conversation. We think that's going to happen in the offseason. Yeah, these prospects didn't go during this trade deadline because I just don't think the value in what you were getting when the return is back. But I can definitely see the Dodgers trading these prospects in the offseason. But it's all going to stem from what happens with Ohtani. It's all going to stem from how can they approve. But I think it has gotten to the point where, at least with certain prospects in this organization, if you are not going to bring them up, if you're not going to give them every day in bats, then they do need to go. Why? It's only like Cody said, you got to be fair to the prospects too. And it's like, look, these guys would be in the major leagues in any other organization. they should have an opportunity to be major leaguers and fulfill their dreams. So if you're just going to keep them down there, you should get rid of them. So yeah, it didn't happen in this trade deadline, but keep an eye in the offseason. I think maybe that's where you might see some deals. Who knows? Maybe this is the beginning of a conversation about Arenado, but it all stems from the ghost of Ohtani. It's all with whatever Ohtani, after the Ohtani situation is resolved, that's when we're going to go ahead and see some real moves. So it is now 3:57. It is almost 4:00. No other news, right, Babyface?
No, I think that's going to do a wrap on it.
So it looks like that's what we got. The final tally, guys, at this trade deadline is going to be Kike Hernandez, Ahmed Rosario, Joe Kelly, Lance Lynn, Ryan Yarborough. That's what's going to take the Dodgers to the end of the season. And when they get into the postseason, you guys better hope one of those guys turns into Hershiser, because it's going to be tough for me. And you're going to start hearing the conversation. They punted this season away. Mookie's getting older. Federico's getting older. Kershaw's getting older. Come the playoffs, if the Dodgers don't win the World Series, I'm letting you know right now, it's going to be like, why didn't they go for it? Why didn't they go for it? But who knows? But I'm very curious. Cody was very level-headed and said, we can't be mad at Friedman. But I'm telling you, I think the fans are going to be upset. And if we can see it already on the live here. So we got to go, because Babyface is going to go talk to Dave Roberts. So make sure you guys follow the Bleed Lows podcast, because I can't wait to see how Dave Roberts handles the questions about the moves, the pitchers they got. And I know they're going to ask him, you guys didn't make a big acquisition for the pitching deadline. But I want to thank everybody for joining us. We got to go. Babyface is at Dodger Stadium. He's got to go talk to Dave Roberts. Once again, yo ha sido su servidor Juan Ramírez, de parte de mis colegas Cody Snavely and Babyface. Nos vemos para la próxima. This episode of the Bleed Lows podcast has been brought to you by betonline.ag, where the game starts. Nos vemos.